Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Erin Katribe, and today we are here to talk about feline housing for health and welfare. It turns out that feline housing conditions in shelters can have a profound impact on the behavioral welfare and the physical health of shelter cats, and that can translate to impacts on our ability to save their lives in shelters. So today, let's talk about the principles of housing that can keep cats happy and healthy. So, why does housing matter? Well, for shelter cats, housing profoundly impacts their stress levels, and that stress level in turn can in fact impact their health, and that can impact their adoptability. And all of this together impacts our life saving capacity at the entire shelter. So, today, let's dig a bit deeper into all of these interactions, and that'll show you why attention to feline housing is so crucial in animal shelters. First, let's talk about behavioral welfare. The research that's out there, research actually done in shelters with actual shelter cats, tells us that cats with better housing spend more time exploring their kennels, and they actually spend more time at the front of their kennels. We also know that cats that are active in their kennels, and cats that appear more friendly or more relaxed, these are behaviors that are actually associated with adoption. When it comes to physical welfare, we also know from the research that cats with better housing experience a lower risk of upper respiratory tract disease. And this is probably the disease that I hear the most about in my work with shelters. It's the disease that many shelters struggle with. And it feels like all the cats in the shelter get this, and it can absolutely impede adoption. Cats with better housing, in addition to a lower risk of URI, also eat more and they lose less weight in the shelter too because they are less stressed. And so these are examples of how a cat's environment can dramatically impact physical health and welfare. So let's talk specifics. What do we know about housing that leads to better health and welfare for shelter cats? First, let's talk about floor space. So ideally, we give each cat 11 square feet of floor space or more, and this actually promotes a reduction in stress for shelter cats. If we can't do 11 though, at minimum, we try to give them 8 square feet. That number, that's actually been shown to decrease the risk of upper respiratory infection. We also give them a hiding spot in their kennel, like on the picture on the right. We give them a place to perch, and we give them a scratching surface. When we place their food and water bowls in their kennel, we place them ideally more than 2 feet away from their litter box. And if we can, we give them a double compartment kennel. One of the most profound causes of stress for shelter cats is going to be a loss of control. And so by giving them all of these options for different enrichment, that hiding spot or that perch, that place to scratch, it allows them to exhibit normal behavior, and it also gives them a choice. And that means a sense of control over their environment. And that is key to reducing stress. I want to point out here, shelters sometimes worry that if they give cats hide boxes, that those cats will hide, and so they won't get adopted because adopters won't see them. And I want you to know that this is completely unfounded. Research has shown us that this is actually not the case. In fact, cats that have hide boxes, they exhibit more behaviors that are associated with adoption. Less stressed cats are less likely to get sick, and that too can impact adoption and improve it. Here is a schematic from the Association of Shelter Veterinarians Guidelines for Standards of Care in Animal Shelters that outlines all of the components of housing for shelter cats, including going from number 1 to number 10, bars on the front of the kennel that allow for ventilation and also actually allow for adopter interaction. We know that interaction with cats can promote adoption. There are stable food and water bowls that are separate from the litter box area. There's a hiding spot, an elevated perch, and there's toys for enrichment. So these two can promote adopter interest. There's quiet latches on this kennel that reduce noise. And this kennel is double compartment, so that allows that cat to have a choice and also facilitates low stress cleaning. There's a litter box that's in a separate area, and there's a separate area for that cat to retreat on the right side too of that kennel. And there's a hiding spot, right, if that cat should choose to. And there's a scratching board to allow this cat to express normal feline behavior. This is an example of what that schematic might actually look like in practice with a modified stainless steel kennel that's had a portal added to make it double compartment. And it's not just the kennel, but we need to actually think about the entire room that the cat kennels are in. So ideally, we keep cats separate from dogs. This means both visually and sound. Barking dogs are profoundly stressful for cats. The room should be well ventilated with clean air. The kennel in the picture, it's directly in front of this giant exhaust fan, but that fan was dusty and it was loud, and so it actually resulted in a high stress situation for the cats housed there. Cats prefer it warmer than other species, and higher humidity can actually mean less respiratory disease in animals. So we're striving for temperatures in the 60 to 80 degree range and humidity at about 30 to 70%. Cats are sensitive both to sounds and to odors, so pay special attention to this and keep noise down. That includes animals, but also includes the people. Avoid strong smells like disinfectant odors, and we'll talk more about sanitation in a little bit. And then cage banks should ideally be raised 18 inches off the floor. Cats feel safer when they're up high, and this also allows for us to better monitor them. And cats, even if they've lived with other cats before, they can become really stressed by unfamiliar cats in the shelter. So try not to have your cage banks facing each other. This can also cut down on respiratory droplet transmission, so the spread of upper respiratory disease. When we talk about modifying existing kennels and shelters to create double compartment ones, and you can DIY this with portal kits, like you can see on the left. Sometimes the thing that I hear is that, but if we do this, then we're reducing the number of kennels by half. And the reality is, yes, your kennel number is going to go down, but your cats are going to be happier and healthier. And again and again and again, when shelters actually do this, when they make this change, the length of time that their cats spend in the shelter decreases. And so over time, more cats move through that smaller number of kennels faster. And so over time, they can actually save more cats than they were, even when the number of kennels was twice as high. I know this might sound too good to be true, but again, this has been the experience of countless shelters that have taken the plunge and installed portals. So let's look at some examples and talk about potential improvements. So on the left-hand side, you can see there, this litter box is right next to this food and water bowl. So we can make a simple improvement by moving that to a different part of that kennel, or if we only have one compartment to work with, just moving it to the other side. In the middle kennel, or the middle picture, that may be a little bit hard to see, but so that cat has a perch, and you can see his rear end is up on that perch, and he is at his water bowl. That perch, because of that positioning in that kennel, it's really awkward for him, and so it's really difficult. He can't easily access that bowl. And so when you're arranging cat housing, really consider how an adult cat, especially a large one, is going to be able to move around that kennel, so we can avoid some uncomfortable postures like this. And then the cat on the right, this cat he's trying to tell us that he's stressed and he is unhappy with his kennel situation. He's completely disrupted this kennel, and that objectively tells us that this cat is stressed. Like we talked about hide boxes for cats in shelters, hide boxes should not be optional. They reduce stress in shelter cats, and we know from the research they do not cause an increase in length of stay, and they can actually promote behaviors that are associated with better adoption. Here's some examples of different ways to provide that. So with cardboard boxes, with cloth hidey beds, or with feral dens, like you can see in the couple pictures on the right. But I want to point out, so that in the larger picture, that small mammal den or that feral den, that opening is actually facing outward. And so that feral den for this cat, it's not really providing a hiding spot. It's not providing refuge for this cat. So please, if you're using these, turn them so that clear panel is not facing the front, or that opening is not facing the front of the kennel. We want to give them a place to hide. Now let's talk about sanitation. For cats that are remaining in their same kennel, when we want to tidy up on a daily basis, we should use what we call spot cleaning. What we do not need to do is pull out everything and do a full deep clean every single day, as long as that cat is staying in that kennel. Let cats keep their blankets, keep their familiar smells. That's actually going to reduce stress. We also know from the research that moving cats, including moves to clean, meaning when we take that cat out, we put them in a carrier while we deep clean their kennel. One study found that cats that experienced more than 2 moves, including these moves to clean, in their first week of stay at the shelter, that meant more upper respiratory disease in that population. So moving cats from kennel to kennel and moving cats into carriers to clean, that increases stress and actually increases illness in these cats. So what we should be doing is spot cleaning daily. Allow cats to remain in one kennel for the duration of their shelter stay. We also know that predictable routines reduce stress. So give cats consistency. As much as we can, have the same staff at the same time of day, that same routine when we're talking about sanitation. What about group housing? We have some guidelines, but a key point here is that the behavior of the individual cats matters more than anything else. And so you can have a group of 2 cats in a giant room, and for those 2 individual cats, that might be too many. However, the general guidelines that we talk about are these: 18 square feet of floor space per cat in group housing. And you'll notice that's more than we're talking about individual housing cats. We want to have the number of resources be the number of cats plus 1 additional one. So the number of food bowls, the number of water bowls, the number of litter boxes. And we also really need to think about access to make sure these are distributed around the room. If we have all of our litter boxes in one space, if 1 cat is guarding the entrance to that area, essentially that's the same as just 1 litter box. So really think about distribution. And changes in the cats in the room, changes in that population, that's the most stressful. So introductions of new cats, that's going to be the thing that causes the most stress because it changes the social dynamic of those cats. And so try to reduce introductions of new cats to the room and as much as you can. Here are some pictures of cats that are trying to tell us that they're stressed. These are shelter cat cries for help. So on the left here, this tortie has disrupted her entire kennel. And again, she's trying to tell us that she's stressed. And part of that is her trying to create a hiding spot for herself. And so you can actually see that in the second image with the cardboard box. The same thing with the kitten in the middle. He's stressed. He's made a giant mess of things in his kennel. And so that disruption, that tells us that they're experiencing stress. The 2 cats on the right, these are cats that are feigning sleep. Their eyes are closed, but their body posture is telling us they're not actually asleep. The orange cat up top, his body is tense, and his paws are up underneath his body. So again, it's not a relaxed posture. The cat on the bottom, she's not even laying down, even though her eyes are closed. And so to compare, you can look at these cats that they're laying on their side, they're relaxed, their bodies look relaxed and not tense, and again, they're on their sides. So that's what real sleep looks like. So sometimes we're stuck in buildings or in facilities that don't have awesome housing. And so what do we do in those situations? And so first, we need to recognize that and start making a plan for the long term. So let's make a plan to put portals in, for example. But also, what can we do today to at least improve their situations? And so here are some examples of that. For the cat on the left that you can see, he's at the back of the kennel, his body posture, his facial expression, his ears, he's clearly telling us that he's not happy and that he's stressed. And so what can we do for this cat today? And for that cat, we can drastically improve things by simply providing a feral den or a hiding box for him. For the cat on the right, this is a portalized kennel, but that portal is closed. And so again, in this situation, something simple that we can do is use that housing as it was intended and open up that portal. And I get it. This can be really scary if you're at capacity for cats, but I promise those cats will be happier and healthier, and they'll move through the shelter faster. So here's some more. So the orange cat on the left. So this cat, he's up on the shelf, and you can see his litter box is under that shelf that he's laying on. And so for him, he's a big guy. He is not able to posture normally in order to use that litter box. So doing something simple, like moving that box out from underneath that shelf, is going to allow this cat to posture normally when he's in the litter box. And then for the cat on the right, so she's in a larger dog crate, but we can drastically improve her situation by, again, doing something as simple as providing a hide box or providing a curtain over part of that kennel so she has somewhere to retreat. And sometimes we might be faced with facilities or with kennels that are just completely inadequate, and there may not be much we can do to improve them. And so here are some examples of that situations where we just actually have to say, no, this is unacceptable housing for adult cats. The kennels on the picture on the left, so these kennels have wire grates on the bottom, and they're just too narrow. And they're not kennels that we can really modify by putting portals in because of their setup. On the right-hand side, these are kennels that were actually initially intended for neonates. And certainly they'd be okay for that type of housing, but these kennels simply cannot house adult cats. And you can see the picture on the cat on the bottom in that kennel setup. This is a cry for help from this cat. He's not coping. Either we use these kennels for neonates or they're temporary holding only while we wait for a foster pickup, for example. These are not long-term housing for cats. Sometimes we find ourselves facing a situation where there might be an immediate risk of cats dying in a situation. And so in that situation, like anything in sheltering, we do want to be sure to be flexible. What if it's just temporary holding? So we can use suboptimal housing in the interest of life saving, but it's really important to recognize what you're doing, do what you can to make it better, and pay attention to how often and for how long you're doing it. If it's becoming a pattern, there's the risk of it becoming normalized, and that's something that we want to avoid. So keep in mind, sometimes housing is just so bad that we can't, under any circumstances, house animals in it, period. But for other situations, maybe it's okay. And an example of that might be dogs in pop-up kennels for a couple of nights so they can get adopted over the weekend. But recognize that it's suboptimal and pay attention. If it's becoming a pattern or it's turning into more and more and more days, then we need to think about alternative solutions. And if this is what you're seeing, I would say reach out to our team for help. Let's talk about your situation and what other solutions might be. Our Best Friends National Shelter Medicine team can help you. To wrap up, remember, better housing for shelter cats means better welfare. Do what you can with what you have, or don't. I want you to go right now, after you watch this video, go walk through your cat housing. What are some small changes you can implement right now to improve the welfare of cats in your care? And make a long-term plan. Start asking for grants to put in portals. Let's include humane housing considerations when we're designing our new cat wards. And remember that better housing saves lives. And while this is absolutely true for dogs, this is especially true when we're talking about shelter cats. If you're interested in learning more, I recommend these resources. There's the Association of Shelter Vets Guidelines for Standards of Care in Animal Shelters, which is available online. And there's this text, Animal Behavior for Shelter Veterinarians and Staff, and it has an excellent chapter on feline housing for behavioral well-being. And again, if you need help with your cat housing or with anything related to shelter medicine, reach out to us on the Best Friends National Shelter Medicine team at sheltermedicine@bestfriends.org so we can help.